Welcome back to the workflow application. This is the second installment, and we're going to be building the REST API and endpoints and displaying all our data here. Here's an example of where we'll end up at the end of this installment of our lessons. As you can see, the tasks is an object within an object. So once we build a step, it'll have tasks, and within tasks you can have as many tasks as you want, and these will be the displaying, editing, and deleting of our tasks right here, as you can see. So let's go ahead and get started and build out our JSX to map through our data. And as everybody who's familiar with React knows, JSX is basically writing the HTML, and then we implement the JavaScript basically where need be, where variables are going to be ran through. I have an interesting point about how JavaScript, how languages actually work. When people ask, is typing, getting this languages, aren't computer languages difficult? And I was like, the way I see them, all languages kind of seem to be just going through lists. So if you can comprehend, a computer basically is just really good at going through lists. And to me, on the front end, that seems to be all I'm ever doing. Is I'm going to go through a big list of things, however big or small, I guess, and then I just show you what these things say, and then you edit that list. But that's basically the whole concept of the internet is it's storing information so you can access it. How's this information presented? It's presented in a list most of the time, and you just run through that and show each one of the things in the list. Pretty simple concept, and as you can see, we're going to be going through the tasks, and we'll be mapping through the list. Now, I'm also going to be checking out to see if something's complete or not complete, and so I turn all the tasks into a string first, and I can comprehend if there's any non-complete. If they're all complete, that step is finished, and it will be a different color according to this ternary operator I'm writing right now. If it's not complete, all the steps are not finished, it will be alert secondary, and if they are finished, it will be alert success. If I'm not mistaken, I come in and swap this at the end. But as you can see, based on them, if all of them are complete, then we're going to change the whole card color that consists of all the lists. But if there's one task that's not complete, then we're going to have a standard-looking non-green card that holds all the lists. And this is just kind of a, hey, all the steps in this, or all the tasks in this step are finished, so we visually will, show that without really much complication. I'm just going to be counting all the things that were actually finished, and then if it meets the amount of length of tasks, then, I can determine that. So as we edit through our steps, our tasks, I need to know which one's active so that I can edit. Other ones will just be being read, and I need to know which one is active. So that will be something that's going to come up, so I know which tasks we're going through and which ones are not being worked on. But I need to have that ready to go for this JSX. Now, this card header is going to be where you can basically have a little title, and it'll display the title, or you can actually, if it's under the edit, if it's ready to be edited, you can actually replace the step title. As you can see, depending on what active step is, if it's not the active step, meaning not the one that's being edited, it's just going to be in this H4, where it'll be showing it's just the title, and you won't be able to edit it. It's an interesting thing about how I'm designing these is I'm using one file and trying to use as least amount of code possible to display both different concepts, whether you're reading it or editing it, same file, same code really, based on a couple ternary operators we're going to be swapping out, either an input or a display. But it also goes the same throughout, whether it be buttons, depending on what function we're using, I'll be displaying one button or another. These are pretty standard things that I want to harness as much power out of one block of HTML as I can. And as you can see here, based on the active step, if the active step matches here, then that means that I'll be editing this list. And if it doesn't match and it's not active, then you'll just be reading all the active steps or tasks that I've implemented. Similar to above when we were talking about inputting or displaying the heading. You got to spell name right, of course. But as always, name is going to be the first and most important attribute. In my opinion, when it comes to forms, name attribute is more important than even if you put in an ID, because HTML is going to, it's going to determine what that field stands for based on the name, not the ID. So yeah, we have a little bit of misspellings we'll come and fix, but as you can see here, you can see the title. Well, it's actually the price, which the price stands for how much money is this step going to cost, or how much time, or whatever you need to evaluate how much sacrifice it is to get across this step. So if you want to put, it's going to be a $30,000 2-week process, you can. I left that so far, it's pretty vague. But it does tell you kind of a little bit more about how long this task is scheduled and how much it's going to take to finish based on all the tasks involved with your step. All right, so let's go ahead and go through our lists. First off, we're going to verify that the tasks is an object. And then we're going to determine if there's more than, or there's at least one task listed in the list in the object. And that being the case, if there is at least one, we're going to map through the tasks object. Now, since we're already in a loop, we're already in the data loop and tasks is nested, we're going to use J instead of I, because I is already representing the outside of the outer side of the object. It's not the nested up part of the object. Now here we're verifying that the name already has complete or not complete. We need to make sure that this item is going to be represented correctly, because we need to make sure that it falls within our naming convention. And here we'll determine, do we have a non-complete? Then we're going to be go ahead and give it a class that matches the. Actually, it says does not have, it is -1, does not equal -1. So we're saying, does it have the not complete in here? And if so, then we're going to give it a class of danger, which is red. And otherwise, we're going to give it a class of info, which is spelled incorrectly there. But what I'm saying is, if the name convention has not complete in it, it's going to be a different color. And this is based on the ternary operator within the class attribute of the tag. And we're also going to come through and do a little verification with the step title. We'll come verify that later on. And let's just go ahead and when we view the thing, this substring to the first index of colon is basically it's just the title without the not complete in it. And let's go ahead and just put that in there. So we don't need to show to the user if it's complete or not. The color will verify that. So we're just going to use the substring to take that part out of the title. And let's just go ahead and organize all of our divs correctly so that this will render in React. Okay, so now that we've got the list group taken care of for the tasks, let's go down here and we'll be determining which active task list is being set. So when we start editing, we need to declare, hey, this is, by the way, we're going to be editing this list or that list. So if active task list is an object, we're going to map through it once again. And this is where we're going to edit. The last one was where we were going to show. So once we've determined we will be editing, which list we'll be editing, we're going to display it here. And it'll not only will it display it, but it'll also show you a little trash can to see in case they want to just edit and take the task out of the list. Or if they want to, this will also determine in this area where they not only can they edit it and delete the task out of the list, but they can make a new task. And there's our delete button here. Now, if we'd like to put in a new task into the list, let's go ahead and put in our input field. And this will allow us, once we're in edit mode for the active task list, will allow us to add on to the specific task list that's active. And we'll put a button that's 100 width across, 100% in width. And on click, we'll add the add task function. So that's it. Either if it's an active step, if it's an active step, you can edit it, and if it's not active, you visually can just see it. That's kind of what this 114 to 138 line is basically doing. Based on what's active, you can either edit it or view it. And then down here at the bottom, we're going to write some JSX to determine if it's not the active step and if it is. Based on which one's active, we will have an opportunity to update, and if it's not, we'll have the edit. So if I say edit, if I click edit, and then that'll put that specific step into the edit mode. If I hit update, that means that it was already in the update or edit mode, and I'm done editing it. So that's what these represent down at the bottom. And here are the arguments I'm going to send over to the function. The edit step is just going to tell you which one exactly based on the iteration. And then update step Update step is going to be passing the false, in which case it's going to say, once in update step, it will say false, meaning no, this is not a new step. We are just editing one. Just a little hint on what's coming that way when we write that function. So let's get these functions together. When I tell you select step, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to pass the iteration, which sets up active step. Now the whole app knows that which step is being edited. And it also activates that list of the active step. So I know that this is the list I can edit. I can remove or add items to this task list and this active task list only. And here are our functions that we need to write based on the JSX I've just put together. So we're going to make a temporary object based on steps data so we can manipulate it without manipulating the original. We're going to go find out to see how many of the tasks there are in each step. And this is where we determine if the whole step has been finished or not, based on this counter coming up. So I'm going to find out what step are we dealing with. And let's go through the steps. And then we're going through the tasks and looking to see if we have a not complete. Now, if I can recall, I actually did do a syntax error here, but for the most part, what I'm trying to do, because I'm going to come back and fix it later on in the video, is I'm counting how many things are finished. And if it has if they all have complete and nobody has a not complete, I'm going to count that. That counter above this if-else statement is going to be heading up. And it's going to be verifying based on checks needed, which is the variable right above it. So I'm going to be counting how many things got complete. If it equals the amount of checks needed, meaning how the top number that we could have actually encountered of completions, then I will determine this step, not only are the tasks all finished, but that means this step is all finished based on the counter. And so this here is going through and verifying whether or not I've finished an entire step, and then we'll apply the green, as we all saw earlier, to the card once all tasks have been finished in a step. So this is kind of an automated your step is finished concept, as you can see, going through and pushing that counter, incrementing once, plus one every time something is complete. See here, it's saying, are these equal? If they are, then I need to make sure that card is a certain color. There we are. That would be an alert success. It looks like I've got the data attribute spelled wrong, so I'll have to come back through and fix that later. Now, if it's not correct, and let's say somebody took on and off some of the tasks, then now we would toggle that alert success out. We would take it out based on the same if statement. Now, we would also be updating our steps, and then no, this is not a new step, so we will pass the false to the update step function. And update step gets referenced quite a bit, so if I'm not mistaken, I drag it up to the top later on. So let's look at our database, and let's take a look at our tables. We're going to create a new one called workflow. And this is where we're going to be saving our tasks, our steps and our tasks, and all the data to tell you whether they've been completed or not. Now, each one of them is going to be identified by a ticket ID. And here's the data that we'll be saving. So in comparison to my older event planner, I'm just kind of following some of those rules. Steps data can be huge. It's going to be up to 5,000 characters, and I'm just saving my database so that it's ready to accept the data that I send to it, which will be here in update step. So these are the variables we're going to need for update step. We're going to need a temp title, a temp price, and we're going to have to figure out which ticket they're talking about. Now, we don't really have a ticket system set up yet, so I'm just going to create fake ticket numbers for this example, and then we'll, in the next video or in future videos, we'll go ahead and we'll create the part where we build a ticket. But for now, I'm going to have a list of fake tickets so that we can move forward. And that list will be in a select menu called events list, which I'm calling here ticket list. Actually, that's better. So I don't know if anybody's ever worked in IT before, but we have things like Jira or ServiceNow, and they build a ticket would be something like, let's say, somebody found an error in your software. And so they submit a ticket. The ticket's got a title. It's got information about what the details are of the error. And this is all hypothetical. That ticket gets shuffled around to somebody, whoever fixes this specific error. It gets assigned. The details get written out as to what all they need to do, all the tasks they need to do to create and solve all those problems. And then it gets pushed into something like this called a workflow. That way, the person who sent the ticket in can log on, and as opposed to emailing somebody going, hey, what's this problem status, they can see where it stands in the workflow. It's on hold, it's being reviewed, it's in progress, whatever the case may be. They will look here in this application and not call or email incessantly until something's done. They will know the status as fast as everyone else does. And as you can see here, I'm coming through and asking a little bit about what we're going to be updating. Now, I've passed through new step, and we also found out which ticket is going to be determined. So here I am going through and saying, our temporary steps data is called temp steps data. Is new step false? If it equals false, then we need to go ahead and make sure that steps title is going to be whatever's written in the step title field. Else, if we don't have something for that, we will just add something in its place. Now, if we're doing an add function, we're going to need to validate. We'll validate and make sure that someone's written something in the title and the new step price as well. Now, we did the validate. If validate found and applied an error to one of the fields, in this case the new step title or the new step price field, if they're empty, our validate function applied error. If there's an error, we're gonna return false and also show alert of, hey, you didn't fill out one of the fields. Now, if there's not an error and they did fill out both these fields, we're going to move forward. We're going to say that as long as the active task list is equal to null, it means there's nothing in there yet, we're just going to make it empty. Now, we're also going to determine what function we're using. Are we using delete or are we using add? Now, if we're using the add function, we're just going to use the spread operator. Now, we've got our temporary steps data, and we're going to add more to it, a new iteration to this object. which is going to have three keys and three values: step title, step price, and tasks. Now the tasks, just what we always remember, is going to be an array. Actually, it's an array. Now, in case we are using the function of delete, this update function serves two purposes. Not only can you add something, but if we've told it we are going to be deleting something, here we go. We're going to go all through our data, and we're going to ask, as long as you don't equal the iteration we're deleting, we're going to push you to the new temp object. Now, either we're going to be deleting it or adding items to this object. Regardless, at the end, whether something was added or deleted, we will be doing a put. So all of this, whether it's adding or deleting, it doesn't really matter. Not to our back-end application. We just updated something, is what I'm getting at. So I'm going to write the Axios syntax. We've got a path. And now we're going to be pushing an object to that path. And then let's put some, like I said earlier, we haven't gotten the ticket parts ready yet, so I'm just going to write, a select menu that has some placeholder ticket names, since we haven't built the ticket system yet. This is just going to be test ticket 1, test ticket 2, and test ticket 3. We just need these placeholders for the time being. And as you can see, I will be pushing this object, which will have a ticket ID. And that ticket ID at this moment is going to be the whatever we selected from the ticket list select menu. It'll be that value. Then we're going to pass our steps data and our price as well. Now, config is something obviously we use all the time. I'm just going to pass it from the app over here. That's going to be so we can check the token on the server side. Now the response is going to send us back whether it did or didn't work. The affected row, if it's 0, that means it didn't work. Nothing got updated. Affected rows, if it's greater than 0, that means whatever you did work. So this response could be a 200. It means it's successful. We reached where we were needing to, but it didn't change anything. It didn't match or whatever the case may be. So this means that there wasn't anything wrong on the server side, but your data didn't update anything. Now, here is I'm going to put the error, which is what we do in all of our calls, is so it didn't work. This is saying we didn't even get there. Something was broken. And usually you're going to get your 500 errors here. But this is pretty basic. You're going to send something. They're going to check the token and the data. And if it's all good, something updated. And if it didn't work out, then it'll tell you, or if there was an error. Now, let's go with the remove task, which is a pretty standard function we need to put together here. Temporary data is going to hold the place of steps data. Temporary list is just where I'm going to be putting my update. Now I'm going to run through which list is active. And from here, I can tell it, hey, if this doesn't equal the number I'm deleting, then push it into the temp list. That way, at the end of our loop, temp list will be the actual new steps data update, and the item that we wanted to leave out is gone. There's a lot of ways to do this. I think this is the most straightforward. It's just looping through and remembering not to push the one you don't want. Very straightforward, not confusing at all. And we're going to do the same thing with adding. Temp data stands for steps data here. Temp list equals the active list. We're going to validate to make sure there was something within that field. And as long as there's no error, we're going to go forward with it, meaning that they did put something in and hit update. And then if everything works the way we wanted, we're going to be doing a spread operator here. What was our steps data holder, which is called, which our temp list holder, which is going to be temp list, and we're going to add in the new item for the array. And then we make sure we know which one's active. And make sure that we know that the temp list has been updated. Okay. Now let's go to the back and write the server-side part. Okay, so I'm going to get through a couple of misspellings in my classes. I've got a couple of errors here that make everything display incorrectly. So I'm going to run around for about a minute, kind of gathering up some of the tedious errors I wrote in my JSX that are going to be pretty easy fixes. That needs to be singular, so call, not calls. Yeah, there's a few errors here. There's a spelling error. Easy fix. Another spelling error here. And as you can see, we are now up to the part where it is time to start writing some server-side code. Let's write our routes. Now, routes are pretty standard. I'm going to write a folder basically that has all the functionality for these items, and workflow is one of them. And so when someone has a route that goes to API/workflow, I'm actually going to route them to this folder structure that I'm building here. I'm going to call it routes, and within routes, I'm going to have another folder named API, and within API, I'm going to have a file named workflow.js, which is going to be all server-side JavaScript, which is also known as Node.js. And we'll start off with bringing in Express. I'm going to require that. And we're going to bring in our router. And we have to declare where our database is, which we already had done at the beginning of this the last lesson. And our check token is for the JSON web token to make sure that it is correct. And let's go ahead and do a post. And also remember, everything that you do within here needs to be exported. So our server side is going to be a post, and the add workflow has been shortened, obviously, because they've cut through with the router to get to this spot. Check token is the next thing after the path. And let's go ahead and write our SQL. Very basic post, we want to insert into the workflow table and here's the items we'll be setting within the table. Not much to it really. Yeah. There we go. There was our post. Now we're going to also get we're going to do the get, which is kind of like the reading of the steps. Now remember, when we add something, we really are only saying, hey, this is a new ticket we're going to be adding, and it's got a name, and it's not really a lot. But when we're getting it, we're going to get all the information. So we're going to select all, which is the asterisk from workflow table, where the ticket equals a specific ID that we sent over with our parameters. Now we're going to go ahead and query the database, pass our SQL statement, and then wait for the result or error. It's all really simple, basic steps. So we'll check for an error first, and if there's no error, then we'll go on and then we'll send the result. Now here would be an update for, they call it a put. So we're going to update our workflow quite a bit. Anytime we click like something's complete or not complete, that actually updates the workflow. So I know it doesn't seem like much what's going on when you just click something and it changes color and la-di-da. It's sending data, updating that task array within that row. So behind the scenes, just those clicks, they're firing off, each one of them. Now it's an interesting part. A lot of applications will use things that hold state. Let's say, like for instance, Redux would be something a lot of people are like, how come you're not using Redux in this application? I don't need it. My database is holding my state. Like when I need to refer back to something, my database is where I'm getting it from. It's going, all the updates go there, and all the reading, everything goes back and forth from a database. I don't need to have anything virtually hanging out. That's not necessary. I'd say that this is kind of Redux there would be no reason for me to have it here because I'm going off real-time data. So let's check up all of these to make sure what I wrote works. Looks like it had to be a big fat no so far. So let's clear out all the cache and get started properly with where we should start by doing the client-side functionality of posting and putting and get. There we go. A couple of spelling errors, obviously. It's going to be helpful to have those correct. See here, 0 affected rows. So it went correctly, but it didn't see a match, is what it's telling me. So let's fix that up. We know we want to go ahead and select the ticket. That's going to be the identifier. It looks like we're getting some 200s here. These are good, but we're also getting no affected rows. So connection's solid, but we're not changing and updating. Let's go take a look at the create step process and find out why. Now we can bring in show alert. This isn't going to solve our massive problem here, but we do need to have the alert to make sure that when validate runs and they find an error, that we let them know that there's an error. So this is a quick fix, and let's get forward and figure out why create step's not working. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a function called postStep. And from postStep, we're going to determine which ticket we're talking about. And then we'll determine select ticket, so we'll know which ticket is active. And make sure that it doesn't say default, because if it does, just like down here, we're going to set the default to something that doesn't have any information, so it'll just return false and then show the alert. And basically what I'm doing is I'm adding another step to the create step process. So based on what I'm doing with create step, I'm going to fire off a couple different options. And so one of the options is going to head off to this post step function. And I'm also going to determine if there was already existing data or not. So if this is new, we're creating a new step, and that means there's no existing data, and we go about it one way. But if there already is existing data, then it's not necessarily a new step. So you'll see how I take this all out here in a second. What's going on is I'm remembering what I had done when I had first written this. So I've been copying what I wrote a while back, and I'm contemplating if it was the right step or not. So I'm kind of reminding myself of, oh yeah, I did it this way. So as you can see, on create step, if existing data is false, I need to post step, which is a new step, and existing data true. If it's not, then I need to go update step. And it's going to say that this is brand new data, which is the true argument it's going through, is going to tell update step to do something different with the true. Now I'm going to grab this stuff down here from line 53 to line 60 eventually and bring that into my post step. There. So now we have, when create step is hit, two things are going to happen, one or the other. One could be, we're going to do a post step based on if this data exists or not. And as you can see, I've already done this validate, so it's not necessary. There. Now post step does the creation. And here we'll do our post. So ticket ID is going to take the value of new step title. That's going to be incorrect, actually, because the ticket ID is going to be what the select menu says. There we go. It's which ticket. And now we're going to go in and get that data. We got to remember that the database does not hold, this is not like MongoDB, so we need to make our JSON a string, and then we'll save it. And then obviously when it comes back out, we'll read it through an object. But this is how we're going to save it. And we're also going to ask it if you actually didn't update in something, even though the connection was good and nothing updated, I need to know. So this is what we're telling us first. So good connection, nothing changed. And give it a warning. Now this one's saying good connection, we got a change. We got a successful change. And then now here's in case there was a 500 error or something of the sorts and there's no good connection, this is the error we shall provide to the user. Okay, so let's put together the populate fields function for the ticket list select menu. So once this ticket list is changed, we need to determine what the name of the selected new ticket is. And in doing so, we need to make sure that it's not default. And then once it's been selected, as long as it's not default, we go and get that specific ticket from the database. This is our get. Now, as long as we have some data to show, we'll go ahead and show it. I'm asking it here, is there any data? Like, this is assuming that there is a good connection, no error, but the data is just an empty object. The length is 0. And so at that point, I'll just go ahead and say, hey, we have a correct connection, but there's no data. And then we'll accordingly set steps data accordingly, and then return false. Now, on the other hand, if we actually have data that we can iterate through, let's go ahead and make sure that it can be parsed. So it's JSON. Remember that it's being saved as a string in the database because it's a SQL. And so once we get this all ready to go, we'll let it know we have existing data. It is true. And then we're going to go ahead and set our steps data. And let's clear out our cache to see how we're standing. I've got logged in. Let's give it a few rounds to see how this works. So we're getting, these are not good signs thus far. Not responding is a 400, so that looks like the path is broken. which it's missing a colon on the server side. So yes. See, there's no data, but it's not broken either. And we're trying to post something that says that didn't work. It's not found. Let's go ahead and take a look at that path and see why that path was broken. We're on our server-side workflow. There we go. There's the difference between existing data. Our path was wrong here as well. So we need to write the API path in there. So it updated, but it did not match. So it doesn't know what we're talking about. It's saying the ticket doesn't match. All right, now it does work. We are adding. Let's go see if the tasks will add as well. Yep. Do an update here. And looks like we have a few errors. Active step needs to be an I. It's an iteration, so that's going to make a big difference. We're logged in. Select the ticket that gets working. There's no data for this one. Let's create some data. Make sure that that's working. All right, then now we're talking. Now we're able to create. Now we're able to update. And it says something's wrong with the workflow on 217. So I'm going to do a couple debugging for the syntax. These are real simple ones from what I recall. Just from, I think anybody, if you're just typing and copying something over and over, you're gonna make tons of syntax errors. So here I'm just making sure that you guys, if you want to clear these out, I want to make sure that the elements exist. That alone is an easy one to do. Is that you can't clear something out if it's not there. There we go. So this is all working together. Let's do an update step. Looks like it worked. Let's create a new step. Now when you roll over these, I want the pointer cursor to show up on the trash can. So let me just fix that real quick. As you can see, it's still not doing it. I spelled pointer wrong in the CSS. And so as long as I spell it with an I in the CSS, it'll work. As you can see, there's my problem. There, one I. All right, now the cursor has the correct look and feel. And as you can see, there's it's doing the opposite of what I want. When everything's finished in red, it's turning green, instead the opposite. So here is my syntax error. I need to tell it what to do. If it equals not complete or complete, I need to replace as we come through and fix these things. And getting closer. As you can see, this is I'm giving the alert success class to its parent, and it needs to be to the card. Now, just a couple more syntax errors with my counter. I'm going to clean this up here. It needs to be in the card. So it's not the parent, but it's the card down below. It needs to be that. All right, let's log in. Let's take a look at what we've done. Closer. Just backwards. You can see how it toggles back and forth from alert success when it needs to be within the elements. I'll soon discover that it's just a simple swap out of my ternary operator. There we go. On line 316, I just need to swap my ternary operator out. All right, and I think we're good here. There, that's correct. When they've been clicked in and they're none of them are red anymore, we want a green parent. And let's go ahead and check them all. Let's try delete. There's still some padding issues I'm going to have to clean up with my alert box. And I'll come through and have to toy with that later on. And now we'll start to realize that we don't have really a delete prepared yet. And you saw on the server side we didn't write one either. But if you want to delete a step, we need to create that. So my next move is to gather up and prepare the delete option. We already have the list to delete from, and we have the confirmation to go ahead and delete something. So let's prepare the server side for the deletion. You see how we have an error there thus far. We're going to go ahead and tell it which one we'll be deleting, which one was selected for deletion. There we go. Just tidy this part up so I can get it organized correctly. All right, let's try it again. Let's try to delete. So those are all working. Now I got a new step. Let's add some tasks. See that it works. Let's just clear out all the logging here. All right. We'll see you next time.